Hardship Blue. In Me and Mrs. Jones. Before the story. Before the cafe. Before the corner and the crowd and the long black car and the welcome that shook the chandeliers. Before all of it, there was just a city. And a city, if you have given yourself to it completely, will tell you things. There are cities that forget. They are the majority. They take what a man gives them, his years, his sweat, his best mornings and his worst midnights, and they absorb it the way pavement absorbs rain. Without ceremony, without record. The man gives and the city takes, and when the man is gone, the city looks the same as it always did, which is to say it does not look like him at all. Then there are the other kind. The kind that remember. Not every man. Not even most, but certain men, the ones who gave themselves without reservation, without the careful holding back that most people practice the way they practice breathing, automatically, as protection against the possibility of loss. Those men the city holds. Quietly. The way a family holds a photograph of someone they loved before loving them was complicated. Gently. Without condition. Without asking anything back. This city was the other kind. And Hardship Blue was one of those men. He had come to this city the way men of his generation came to cities, young and certain and full of something he did not yet have a name for, something that lived in his feet and his hands and the particular angle at which he wore his hat, something that the street seemed to recognize before he had finished recognizing it himself. He had been 19 years old, and the city had opened before him the way a stage opens before a performer who was born for it, not with fanfare, not with invitation, but with the simple and irrevocable fact of being there, waiting, ready to be inhabited. He had inhabited it completely. For 30 years he had worked its corners, and its back rooms, and its wide avenues, and its narrow alleys. He had performed on its streets in sun and in rain and in the thick summer heat that turned the pavement soft and the cold of winters that made the lamppost metal burn to touch. He had given the city his youth and his prime and the long middle years of a man discovering what he actually was, as distinct from what he had always assumed he would become. He had given it his love for Celestine, who had watched him from the back of a crowd and understood before he did that she was watching something rare, and who had married him and made a life with him and loved him for 30 years with the fierce, unhurried love of a woman who had chosen well and knew it. He had given the city his grief when Celestine was gone, spreading himself across its blocks like a man distributing his weight across uncertain ground, trusting the city to hold him the way it had always held him. The city held him. This is not a story about a fallen man. Let that be said plainly at the beginning, before the first scene is set or the first character steps into the light. Hardship Blue had not fallen. He had changed shape, the way water changes shape to fit whatever holds it, without losing a single drop of what it is. He was not diminished. He was distributed. There was a difference, and it was not a small one, and this story will not pretend otherwise. He was 52 years old. He had been married for 30 years to a woman he loved. He had been the finest street performer these blocks had ever produced, not the flashiest, not the loudest, not the most eager for attention, but the finest, in the way that fine means something specific, built with care, built to last, built from the inside out. His style of performance had fallen out of fashion the way all true things eventually fall out of fashion, because the world moves faster than it moves wisely and often cannot tell the difference between something outdated and something it is not yet ready to understand. But the city remembered. The city knew. And in the particular way of cities that remember, in the paper bag on the corner post, in the plate set at the corner table with the good lamp, in the chair at Manny's, and the cot at Benny Pope's, and the tin behind the loose brick on Whitmore. The city kept its account. And then there was Mrs. Jones. Adeline Jones was not a woman who did things without intention. She had been careful her entire life, careful in the way that women of her position and her generation were taught to be careful, which is to say thoroughly, at considerable personal cost, and with the particular expertise of someone who has been practicing since before they were old enough to understand what they were practicing or why. She had been careful about her image and her associations and the management of what other people thought of her, and she had been good at it, and it had cost her more than she had ever allowed herself to calculate. Then she had turned a corner on a Tuesday afternoon and followed a sound she could not identify, and found herself at the back of a crowd on a city street corner, watching a man in a gray jacket and a brown felt hat do something with his feet and his hands, and the very air around him that she had no proper word for. And something in her, something she had been careful with for so long that she had nearly forgotten it was there, went very quiet and very certain. She had not known then what she was walking into. But the city knew. The city had known for some time that these two people, the man who had given himself to it completely and the woman who had kept herself so carefully, were moving toward each other the way two rivers move toward a confluence, which is to say slowly, inevitably, and with the full intention of becoming something neither of them had been alone. This is the story of what happened when they arrived. It begins, as the best things begin, at a cafe table in the afternoon light. It ends, as the best things end, with a room full of people on their feet and a city keeping a promise it had made a long time ago to a man who had earned it. Everything in between is the story.